So let's get started. Thank you everyone for attending our session to listen to the exciting world of payments. My name is Nilesh Tusen. I'm the industry lead for institutional payments at AWS. And we are going to talk about what are some of the new developments happening in the world of payments and how financial services customers and our esteemed panelists are going to talk about how their respective organizations are meeting the customer needs when it comes to various payment services. So with me on the panel, we have Kush from JP Morgan. We have Dharmesh from, we are getting an echo. Dharmesh from Canberra, and then Rusiru from the Clearinghouse. So we are going to start the session by asking each of our panelists to talk a little bit about, as we like to think about in the world of AWS, voice of the customer, right? So everyone over here has a different interaction with their customers. And I'm going to start with Kush and ask him to talk a little bit about his background at JP Morgan, and then considering the role JP Morgan plays in terms of the wide variety of customers JP Morgan has, starting from retail to enterprises to corporates. What are some of the things you're hearing when it comes to payments from your customers?
Yeah, thank you, Nilesh, and thanks everyone. It's nice to be here, and excited to talk about payments. JP Morgan doesn't need introduction, but maybe I'll talk a bit about what we do in payments for JP Morgan and our customers. So payments, we move $10 trillion a day, which is the business we are in across consumers, across corporates, across small business and enterprise. It's seen tremendous growth. A lot of the focus obviously has been away from standard disbursements to more faster money movement across the globe at scale. So hopefully we'll cover some of those topics today. I think, from my side, I have two hats. I have one, I run real-time payments globally for JP Morgan. I also run what we call a payment platform. So any money movement through all the platforms, I'm driving a lot of the modernization journey, the build, the delivery, and the platform strategy for which markets and where we want to be for our customers at scale. Let's talk a little bit about the client aspect of how we sort of interact with them, and what I often hear is maybe three parts. And part one to me starts with connectivity. And there's a lot of focus on how we connect with clients. There's a lot of focus on how we can connect it in a seamless sort of more at scale. And so one of the things we have done is we've launched the developer portal for our customers to have a lot of the ability to look at our documentation for APIs, have single APIs for connectivity across the board, and also be able to play and test and configure on their own end on how they want to connect with us, as opposed to having what I'm used to in the back, a multi-day, a long-dated like channel approach for connectivity. So one of the changes we have made is the single payments API for all markets, all rails, all corridors across where we play for our customers to come and connect. And that's seen a lot of momentum with how they want to connect with us, but also mostly for me, it's being part of their growth journey. In customers that do business with us in one region, one market, for them to be able to scale in other countries in the future, it makes it much easier for them to do that. And so that to me is one thematic. I think as you go deeper in the transaction journey and the flow, then the more important part to me that we spend a lot of time on is just on platform experience and client experience. And a lot of that comes down to, talking a lot about the money movement from a, throughput standpoint, and money movement through a platform experience, sort of like SLA standpoint, and what we can offer at scale, but also like really getting into the details of real-time payments is 24/7. It's the only rail that's available on the weekend. So how do we make sure we're always there for them without taking downtime through our infrastructure, and making sure that we can always move money at any point in time? And that's been a big journey for us in terms of the modernization, the move to cloud. We are multi-cloud at this point. AWS to us is a big provider for how we enable our landscape. And that has been an excellent sort of step change in our experience. And that lets us compete with any of the competition out there to offer real-time payments at scale across many markets. Just to give you some sense, we're already in 45 markets. We're going to be in 60 by end of next year. At that point in time, I think we cover 95% of the average daily transaction volume over any RTP market in the world. It's 1 billion transactions a day. And that's massive in its own sense. It's growing 30%. And I see a lot of growth coming from many countries mostly APAC and LATAM, but I'm sure we'll talk a bit about what we're doing at TCH in the US. The third thematic I was going to talk a little bit about is there's a lot of journey with them on the need for what I call account validation. And there is a thematic in the world on confirmation of payee, Benny validation, account validation, because ultimately the money that's moving to real time is been moving on low value for all this time. And so as customers move from a low value experience to instant, they are used to the low value experience. And we in RTP cannot touch our transaction. So it almost has to be no touch all the way, but we have to put safeguards in play for how we manage fraud, how we look at sanctions. And that to me is something we spend a lot of time with the regulators, we spend a lot of time with the customers, and then have to make sure that our experience is designed in a way to comply, but also not take away the experience of what real time should feel like. I often get asked, what does real time actually mean? And how do you define real time? And the answer varies, right? It's 7 seconds in some markets, it's 10 in some markets, it's 15 in some markets. So that's also another needle that we have to just continually thread in terms of what is our performance metric on how we define a real-time payment. But it's great to be here. Like I said, connectivity is important, platform experience is critical, and then the journey on how we think about validation from fraud, sanctions, and availability, I think is what's been top of mind. Right. And that's where our efforts have been focused.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And like Kush said, real-time payments in terms of volumes are increasing all over the world. And I'd love for Dharmesh to give his perspective more from a cross-border payment standpoint and how you guys are looking at what are you hearing from your customers from a cross-border payments standpoint.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Dharmesh Sayal. I'm responsible for product and technology at Convera. So if some of you don't know Convera, we were the carve out from Western Union Business Payment Solutions. So that was about 2.5 years ago. We are in the business of obviously sending money cross-border, receiving money, offering hedging and risk products to our customers. These two colleagues on my sides are our partners in operating that network. So I think from a customer lens, if you look at it, I think as a cross-border payment company, there's always been can you be economical? Is it cost effective? How do you look at efficiency? So can you actually send money, handle the volatility for me? Is it easy to use? How do I enter beneficiary information, all the AML stuff, et cetera, which happens behind it? How can you make it easy? At the same time, is it transparent? Do I have peace of mind in terms of compliance, et cetera? Will it be safe, resilient, secure, et cetera? What we see more and more, which is accelerating from our customers, is we're building a new payment infrastructure, a composable infrastructure, all on AWS. And this infrastructure, where our customers are asking is, can you actually provide us more speed and flexibility? So I think instant payments, which Kush was talking about, part of it. How do you look at flexibility from workflow, orchestration? How do I send multiple payments, single payments, all at the same time? I have the ease to do all of that. The second connected theme with that is the connected payment. So don't ask me, payment today is a chore. You come to an AP AR system or you have a digital experience where you come and enter a payment. Can it be actually connected? Do it in my system, my way. Order, book, do the transaction, do the reporting, do the reconciliation, all in one place. Finally, the last theme which we are seeing from our customers is more and more customers are looking at technology and how technology can actually help them. And they look at their consumer experiences and say, hey, can you bring this to B2B? So one of the themes is like, can you be intelligent about, don't solve just my payment problem. How do I manage cash? Yes, you do solve me, how do I manage my payment configuration? When should I hedge, et cetera? So we can talk a lot about where AI, data, et cetera, can play. But can you make my treasurer intelligent? So I think we call it intelligent treasurer. Finally, the commerce itself is changing. So the last theme which we see from our customers is, can we actually look at commerce being done more smarter? Money movement, yes, we work with you. Can you help us with goods and services movement? So a lot of the trade and services customers we work with, they're looking at how goods and services will be. And this is where FX is getting reconfigured. Like there's going to be a lot of conversation around what's happening with crypto words, smart coins, et cetera. How do you handle all the FX reconfiguration in a very dynamic way for us? So that's kind of the different themes, Nilesh, which we hear from our customers.
Oh, absolutely. I think those are some really interesting points in terms of customers' expectations, right? Now, let me turn it over to Rusiru. You clearly operate a national infrastructure, right? And you hear from a lot of stakeholders, financial institutions, customers like Convera, and of course, regulators. So what are you hearing from these different stakeholders? And then how does that get into some of the things that you're working on at the clearinghouse? If you can shed a little bit of light on that.
Sure. Thank you. Rusiru Gunasena from the clearinghouse. I have the responsibility of partnerships. That includes all our technology providers, platform providers, as well as large dispersers, corporates. Before the responsibility of partnerships, I also had the pleasure of running the RTP network product and strategy. So 3 years in the clearinghouse. Not like JPMC, I think the clearinghouse might need a little introduction because we are behind the scene network operators in the country. We run 3 major networks. One is the CHIPS network, which is the FedWire equivalent. And then we also run EPN, which is the Fed ACH equivalent. And the latest network is RTP, real-time payments. So what we consistently hear from the customers now is that RTP is not an emerging capability. It is critical financial system, ecosystem capability. You heard Kush and Dharmesh both talking about what they see and what they hear and how they're implementing the RTP capability. From the customer point of view, I think the customers are demanding real-time digital experiences. It's no different for payments. Whether it's your Grubhub or Uber, whether it's Amazon getting delivered today in real time, also the tracking capability Dharmesh talked about, especially in the cross-border payments, and it's also common to domestic payments. The customer wants to make sure that they can track the payment journey as well along the way. Right? There are a lot of other emerging capabilities we are putting at the clearinghouse on the RTP network, continuing to make it safe and secure, which is also very important as a market infrastructure to make it safe and secure. We will get into the other feedback I'm hearing on the technology front, how we modernize or bridge the gap of legacy technology with platforms like AWS later on.
Okay, great. No, thank you. So now that we've heard from our panelists over about what they are hearing from their respective customers, let's look at the other side of the equation, which is there are trends in the industries that are happening more from a regulation standpoint, and in some instances, markets are, there are different things, different payment rails getting rolled out in different parts of the world. So I'd like to start with Dharmesh and ask him to give his perspective around how the recent trends around embedded finance, right? Embedded finance has been happening through regulations in some parts of the world. In the US, it's becoming largely market-driven. So how does embedded finance lead to providing better services, better customer experiences, value-added services to help, like what Kush was talking about, right? Payment, or Dharmesh was talking about, payments is a chore, and how do we not make that a chore and make it as transparent and as in the background as possible? So Dharmesh, if we could elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely, happy to. So I think as we are we launched our payment infrastructure last year in Asia, we're expanding it. So having solutions, we as a company for decades have solutions built around that, but that's a chore. Somebody in the treasury department or somebody in finance has to come to, yes, obviously a superior digital experience, and they can enter all the information, the beneficiaries, all the AML information, etc., get the payment done. But the real need is, can I actually do it natively in my system, my way? So if I'm operating, let's talk about first AP and AR context. In an AP and AR context, I actually have a vendor I have to onboard. Then I have to have some orders which I have to process, those invoices which I have to process. I have to pay, I have to settle, and I have to reconcile all of these payments. Can you not just embed the transaction? Because that was a natural step. Hey, can we just embed the transaction facilitation? Can you do it at a life cycle level? That's basically where we hear a lot of our customers coming, and that's our payment infrastructure, which we rolled out, launched last year, built on AWS actually. The next stage to that is money movement is one. Really what I'm worried about is my goods and services movement. So take, for example, one of our manufacturing customers. They have their manufacturing scheduling. This manufacturing scheduling leads to supply chain leads to procurement, to payment, to actually then quote to cash processes where they sell the products. In all of this equation, tell me how can I actually optimize my payment experience within my native experience. So I think we are seeing more and more about make it native to us, make it full life cycle so we can track to that. This is where some things become important, like what data do you really need? And that's where some new standards are coming, like the ISO 222, etc. We will see a lot more new standards come through how data is shared in all of these processes. So we see a lot of demand coming from having services which disaggregate those capabilities and naturally embed them in the ecosystem.
Reduce the friction
Absolutely.
for the end customers. Now that leads to now clearly a company like Convera works with banks very closely, right? Because you're not a bank, so you have to custody funds at a bank like say JP Morgan. So Kush, um, as a bank, you have many payment options that you can offer to your customers, both retail customers, customers like Convera and others. So can you talk a little bit about, in your view, what does a modern payment platform looks like, which enables, which hides the complexity of the different payment options that customers have, but they can just move money as and when they want in a manner where, it's as frictionless as possible. And how do you make it available both to customers, like retail customers, through your interfaces or through your developer portals and some of the tools that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think there are like different personas at play, and I think the markets and regions are also like moving at a different speed and pace on their own. So maybe we talk about this in two different ways. One is, if you think about what's happening in the regional sort of demographic, for example, in APAC and LATAM, there is a lot of regulatory, like public policy push on moving towards real time. And there is a view to get away from low value. And so the market structure is enabling that growth and driving that growth towards more instant solutions. And so the experience. And the experience is not just limited to a payout experience, just settling into an account on a real time basis. It's also the real time experience on the front end of being able to collect the payment. And so that gets into QR code, that gets into many ways of initiating a payment. And so for me, a lot of the focus in APAC and LATAM is a lot about giving customers easy pay-in capability and almost masking the real time. They should never know the payment got done. That's our job. They should just know that I initiated the payment and the payment got done. And so for me, that the smoothing out of the experience in the front end, and then being able to offer real time as a payout capability in the market where naturally the customers want it, the regulators push for it, and the market structure is demanding that in 2-3 years, the low value rails will be sort of on a low burn, will come to a sunset on their own. It just puts real time in a different league from a volume standpoint and experience standpoint. The other part then is, if you come more towards the West, that to me is more use case driven, where naturally the card rails are so deeply penetrated as a means of money movement for consumers and retail. It will evolve on an organic way as use cases expand from just simple credit transfer on account to account to now doing sort of one leg out, indirect send, being able to do nested flows. And that's a journey, we often speak to the network house about rule writing and how can we push for it a little bit. But I think you can still come at it from both sides. I think if I think about the West and the markets here and how SEPA is moving as well, more use case expansion will drive just more flow movement.
Sure.
I think it'll depend a lot on, to me still, what remains unpenetrated or under is the B2B space.
Yep.
So I think the B2C, a lot of the P2P has moved, but how do we get to the point where we talk about intelligent treasury? Intelligent treasury is, everything starts with an account and then follows a payment or payment into an account, either way of side of it. But getting the treasurers understand when they can use real time, in what cases is it cheaper, when is it better, I think, and to get that experience embedded in their own journey as part of that decision process is important.
Sure.
For me, as I think about payment platforms, we build a market on an interoperable basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, when I want to go into a market, it's two ways. In many countries, you have two rails for RTP.
Sure.
And so we want to be interoperable and we don't need them have to worry about, should I use X versus Y? I should
That's
make
your
that
job,
choice for them and do it. B, if it's low value and RTP and others coexisting, we should pick for them what is efficient, faster, and cheaper. And that's something we can offer. And then the last thing I would say to the persona side of it is just education and awareness on what's better for them. And so one of the things we have done is in our digital channels, I've taken away the option for pick a wire, pick an ACH, pick a this, pick a that.
Wonderful.
We just say, I want to make a payment. And we let them say, here's the account, here's the money, move it. And then we decide for them how to. Obviously, it's not there for the B2B space yet because that just needs a little bit more work. But as you get to the innovation economy and the upper, like the middle market and below, I think that's the way to simplify on the front end
Sure.
the enablement of faster payments.
Makes sense. So, Rusiru, clearly, the experiences that, JP Morgan or, Canberra wants to build, they have a lot of dependencies on what the national infrastructures offer. So, I have a two-part question for you. One is, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the popular use cases you've seen for RTP in the US? And then what is the role technology can play to help you meet some of the needs that you're hearing from your stakeholders, like the JP Morgans of the world or the Conveyor of the world? So if you can elaborate on that, that would be great.
Sure. From a RTP perspective, for the last 7 years, we have seen the use cases evolve and grow. We'll start with the gig economy workers getting paid daily, whether it's a Grubhub or Uber driver getting paid the same day they work so that they have money to pump fuel to work the next day. That's very much of a growing, emerging use case we see. We see growth of RTP across multiple industries, whether it's healthcare, payroll, real estate transactions, especially with the limit going up to 10 million just last February. We see now over $7 billion settling each day. That record is getting broken every day, but you can see now the real estate transactions, all the touch points, whether it's escrow payment, down payment, and closing can be done on RTP. Also, from a perspective of numbers, we can see now over 1 million transactions a day continuing to grow. And then a lot of innovation happening, whether it's fintechs building capabilities on accounts payable or accounts receivable solutions, use of other technologies, embedding tokenization, using the rich message structure in ISO 20022 to embed necessary information to do additional due diligence, whether it's doing economics, how do you do pricing based on risk-based analysis. So there's a lot of growth in the network across all the use cases, industries, using the rich capability, which is not available in some of the legacy payment rails. RTP is additive, it's not a replacement. So we see financial institutions, fintechs, and the technology providers adopting RTP as additive and new and innovative use cases coming onto RTP. The role of technology, definitely I think there is a play with technology, because when you look at some of the legacy technologies, whether it's batch core systems which goes to sleep in the night, certainly cannot serve real-time payments 24/7. One of the network requirements is you need to have the capability to acknowledge the payment coming in within 15 seconds and then make sure the funds are available to the recipient. So definitely the technology bridge has to happen between legacy tech and the new emerging technologies. That's where the platforms come into play with capabilities. You can scale, you can go to market faster and implement new and emerging use cases with some of the platform capabilities and the new technologies.
So no conversation is complete without speaking about Gen AI or AI machine learning. So Dharmesh, can you speak a little bit about the role of AI, machine learning, and Gen AI in your business and how you see that improving some of the things you're doing?
Sure. So I think, as you rightly said, no conversation is complete without talking about AI or Gen AI. So I think a Convera AI journey started. So we started building this infrastructure once we acquired the business and rolled it out. Our journey is actually divided into 3 parts, Nilesh. So we talk about productivity, protection, and value creation. That's how we look at the whole sphere of Gen AI and AI. And we are a regulated business. So we talk about explainable AI. We don't talk about vanilla AI because explanation data is very important when it comes to regulated businesses. So on productivity side, all our new platform, all our testing is actually automated, generated by Gen AI. 90% of our test cases, regression testing, integration testing. So we started with software development, product development, user stories. Coding is a myth. Like, how much code can actually Gen AI generate? You need to have the context of your code base. How do you have the knowledge graph of your code base and you can generate? So there's a lot of productivity areas within software development itself. Then it comes to look at all the organizations we operate. So we rolled out, built on AWS Bedrock, a solution on how do we look at our customer care and payment operations processes. We can actually automate a lot of them is where our thesis was. So we rolled out that solution last year and launched that solution. We can actually bring down the workflows from 300 to 100. We can actually have the first touch resolution for customers improve significantly. All our mailboxes compressed from 105 mailboxes to 2. So we can bring all those efficiencies. That's all productivity space within, whether it's treasury, back office, operations. Protection is an interesting area. So we talk about transaction monitoring, sanction screening, a lot of false positives, et cetera, which create one inefficiency for our customers, inefficiencies for us. How do we go after that? Finally, the most exciting is the value creation. So I think we were talking about, intelligent treasurer, et cetera. How do we give the intelligence to our customer? We have 4 decades of cross-border data. We see everything. Within each ecosystem, we can see who traded with whom, what did they pay to each other. How can we actually bring that intelligence back to our customers? So I think there were some conversations in the main room earlier in the morning around agentic for us is a different interesting space. If you are a manufacturing company and you are buying goods, the trade corridors are changing, where should I procure what product from? And from which supplier? Payment is downstream to that, but can you actually get the intelligence to me? Can you orchestrate through agents how my commerce is actually happening? And this is where the interesting areas of AI will really create value for our end customers, above and beyond creating value for the financial community within each of those customers. So yes, the treasurers have to be smarter, payments have to be more efficient, we need to manage the FX risk more effectively, but can I streamline your commerce? That's the big opportunity.
Makes sense. And like you rightly said, right, risk management is a very important component of running payments effectively. So, Kush, if I can ask you to comment on 2 things. One is the scale at which JP Morgan operates, right? How do you think about scaling your payment operations, right, at a global scale, not just from a transaction per second standpoint, but more importantly, when you think about instant payments, one of the biggest concerns we hear is risk management and fraud mitigation. So, if you can speak a little bit about the scale of how you think about operating such a large organization at scale, and then from a risk management standpoint,
Absolutely.
what are some of the things you could think about?
Glad you didn't ask me the AI question. I'm not an AI expert, but I think, look, from our standpoint, we, like Dharmesh was talking about, we have the power of data, which is really, really helpful and instrumental in what we can achieve. I think my 2-point answer on that would be, one, we look at a lot of this from a risk management standpoint in the fraud space. And one of my goal is to bust this myth of faster payments is faster fraud. That's not true.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's not what's stopping instant payments from growing. I think what we need to focus a little bit on is the fraud mechanism at play and what we do there to really improve what we can do from a fraud standpoint. And given how much we process in terms of ACH and wires and also now instant payments, the collective combination of knowing the accounts and the identity of the account and the validity of the account, the eligibility over what we can do on can't actually creates a better way to make decisions.
Sure.
I think there we also work with networks and regulators on the work that they are doing to create, fraud toolkit, which is centrally then managed that everybody contributes to, which we bring back, and obviously it enhances our own process. So a lot of work on fraud in terms of risk management. I think I can tell you, fraud happens everywhere, checks and ACH and everything. We can talk a lot about it, but in general, to me, that AI combination with data and what we can do is a great push for managing how we deal with fraud. I think the other part I was going to mention on scale and 24/7 is we use a lot of AI in general sort of observability of our platforms. Because it's not so much running it, but it's also being able to support it. And then when things don't work, we do want to recover very fast. And a lot of that gets back into just pattern matching.
Sure.
And so pattern feeds back into fraud, pattern feeds into recovery, pattern feeds into just general observability of what can we do where, which corridor, what's the throughput, where am I hitting my limits, where am I hitting customer limits, where am I hitting regulatory limits. And so a lot of that agentic AI toolkit that we now have, all of the other ones like chatbots, LLM is just table stakes. We've moved past that very fast. So my hope is that as we get into more markets, more corridors with toolkits that's available, we can really level up on our degree of availability, our degree of recoverability, and also just general sense of observability on what's happening across these markets.
Sure.
And that to me is, if achieved, you really then set the foundation of running 24/7 an RTP business at scale across money markets, because our clients are global and they come at different times and they transact differently.
Makes sense, makes sense. So we are almost at time. Apologies, we won't have time to take questions, but we'll be around if you have, follow-up questions. We can happy to talk about that. Just to, summarize what we heard, which is, instant payments are happening all over the world. The main thing that you heard from our panelists is payments, what they are hearing from their customers should go in the background. Payment should be in context. And more importantly, the use of technology can be used to scale, not only from an infrastructure standpoint, but also to reduce a lot of friction that happens from a risk management and other things. So I hope this session was useful, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And happy to take any additional questions afterwards if there are any. But again, thank you so much.